Welcome to the Ghost Show online, my fiends, booze, and ghouls. Your hosts, Seika Groves, Rachel Benter, and Ian Russell will discuss all things paranormal. Prepare to be afraid.
I'm going to start then, because I've got this really interesting picture behind me. It doesn't look like much. It just, but it is actually a really cool old family graveyard that belongs to a site in Haldeman known as Ruthven. And Ruthven was an old family estate, and it was in a town at the time known as Indiana, Ontario.
Oh.
Yeah, so Indiana, Ontario was actually on the Grand River. And when it was sort of at its peak, it was actually a booming little metropolis. It had mills, and it also had 12 pubs. If you can believe it.
That's a lot.
There was approximately, if I can remember correctly, and it could be wrong, but I think there was about 6,000 people in the vicinity at the time. So a pretty substantial community. It had 12 pubs. The majority of people were Irish immigrants that were there working. So these Irish immigrants would come in and work at these mills, and they settled in the region. And so it was a pretty booming little metropolis. When you go by today, you would never know that. Most of Indiana is long gone. There's no more town. There's just a few sparse homes scattered around. And most of the original homes are gone outside of Ruthven. And then there's a house next to Ruthven that still was one of the original buildings. And it was, I believe, another inn at the time.
Oh, another one?
So, yeah. So it was next door to the
many to
property.
choose from.
Well, yeah, and not so much a pub. I think it was actually an inn, like where you could stay. But Ruthven itself is quite large, and the home itself is really beautiful. I'll post some pictures up on our Facebook page, but it's a gorgeous old home, sort of Georgian Italianate style. And oddly enough, the same builder built a house in Bridgeburg, Fort Erie, that is literally the identical version of Ruthven minus half of the house. So Ruthven is completely, what's the word I want to say? It's completely aligned, geometrically, whereas in the other home is only half, so it doesn't have the second extension on the outside. But same architect, same building structure. And so kind of uncanny that there's two homes, one slightly smaller than the other in the region. But the interesting thing about Ruthven is I have a little bit of a history there. I used to work for a company that did tours there, but I also do workshops there in the cemeteries.
Oh, wow.
So I do cemetery headstone cleaning workshops. And we predominantly don't focus on the family one. There's an Irish cemetery that was found on the site as well. Some years after the fact, they were cleaning up bramble, and there's a naturalist and part of a university program where they do bird tagging and bird banding there. So they catch birds, migratory birds in the spring, and they band them and they release them. And while they were doing this, they were sort of tromping over this area all the time, and somebody happened upon a headstone that was in the bramble, and that sort of escalated into the fact
that happens more often than people realize.
An entire cemetery devoted to the Irish who were working for the mills and and now the interesting thing is that the church as well was on the site there. The Irish church. So they found the little Catholic church that was there, the chapel, and they set up. So they've now cleaned the entire site away. and they've reset a lot of the headstones. They've uprighted them. And then I think it was in 2019 was the last time I did a workshop there, in around this time of the year, actually. It might have been a little bit more into the spring, but I was teaching people in the community how to clean headstones, because these cemeteries are maintained by the public. This is a site that is, is
that a popular workshop? Did you get a lot of people there?
We had a lot, because there's a lot of people involved in the Haldeman upkeep of sites, and so it was put on by the museum there, the Edinburgh Square Museum, and they hosted it, and so they had, I think there was about 35 people at the workshop, so it was very well attended.
That's nice. Yeah, that's a nice number.
So we cleaned about 2 inches of a headstone in 2 hours. Right? Because people forget, it's a very daunting task when they end up looking like this and they're completely covered in,
they've got the
in efflorescence and calcium deposits and water damage and mold and mildew. You can't just scrub at them, right? You have to clean them very, very delicately, and you have to use proper cleaning solutions. So, people who think, I'll just go out there with some dish soap and a scrub brush, and no, that you're damaged the stone, right? So anyways, it was a fun workshop. So this is the family cemetery as opposed to the Irish cemetery on site. So this one here, my story is, and it leads into, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen that commercial I posted that I did for Arby's. Have you guys ever seen that?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Is that
the cemetery?
That story is this cemetery. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's great.
I'll repost the link for people to see.
That's such a great advert. It's so very funny.
I know, and it sounds really weird that it was an Arby's commercial, but it was. And it was a series that they had done called Believe It or Not. And they had engaged a number of people who either were had experiences of the paranormal type. So whether it was myself as a medium or as someone living in a haunted house or someone that had been abducted by aliens and all these things, we're telling a story. And then at the end of our story, they interject with so we're selling this sandwich for this much money. Would you believe that? And of course, then we're saying, no, I don't believe that. Right?
That's great. I love it. It's so great.
To this. So this cemetery, for a better one of things, this is a family cemetery. The people that owned Ruthven were the Thompson family, and they were Scottish, right? They were a Scottish family. And, so they had their own family cemetery. And I mean, unfortunately here you can't see, but the river is actually just behind here, the Grand River. So I was there one evening doing tours, and it was late. I think it was closer to Halloween. And Ed, my husband, was in the Irish cemetery doing a tour. So I was giving tours in the family cemetery. He was doing tours in the Irish cemetery. And they had the property open for, sort of a Halloween themed number of evenings. And so doing the tour in here, there was actually myself and another tour guide. And because we had huge crowds of people that came out, so we would take turns. But what we would do is we would never have both tours in the cemetery. It's quite small, right? So it's sort of over here on the right-hand side. This is sort of the end of it on that side. And then over here, there's a fair bit that goes to the bank, but it's not a huge cemetery. I'd say it's possibly an acre in size, maybe an acre and a half at the most. The Irish cemetery is much larger, but this one is family. So we're doing these tours. So I'm dressed in my widow's weeds, and I have my black widow's weeds on, and I have a big veil on, and it's a really long veil. It's under my hat. This tomb here is what we call a tabletop tomb. It literally looks like a table and a big slab stone on top. Well, this is all concrete, so it's all poured concrete. And this is actually the matriarch of the family, right? So this is I guess she'd be like a 3 times great grandmother to any, people from the Thompson family today. right? We don't really see these tombs if it's not Scottish, right? So you know by these tombs that these are Scottish families, right? This is something, whoa, what happened to my camera? Look at that. I start talking.
Blurring out.
Okay, we're having good.
Blurring out.
That's never done that before.
We're used to this, though, aren't we? This is the whole premise of the show. Something's just, haunting the show.
I'm going to speak to the story. I want you guys to have enough time to talk about yours. But so here I am. I'm standing with another woman and her mother. And we're talking, and I can feel like a little child, my legs. You know, like when a kid runs up to you, right?
Yes,
And Ian, you've got kids. Remember?
I wonder if they thought you were mom. Yeah.
On your legs. This is what happened to me. I'm standing here. This woman's beside me and her mother, and we're talking. And I feel this, and I'm like, oh, hello, right? And then so I say to them, oh, I think there's a child here. And then the other woman says, oh, I just felt something tug my back of my outfit, right? And I said, yeah, they just ran up to me and like hugged me around the legs. And so anyways, we're talking, and her mom then all of a sudden goes, there's a whole bunch of children in here. And we all look over to this side, which is where the children are buried in the cemetery. And there was this weird mist rising out from the ground. It was the most bizarre thing. Of course, this is nighttime. I don't have a camera. I'm busy doing what I'm doing. But a bunch of people shot pictures of it. They actually got it. So it was like one of those things. Was it fog? Because it was an October night and it had been a warm, sunny day. So maybe the ground was kind of warm still and it was just releasing that. But it was pretty weird because when we started to review the pictures after the fact, you could almost see shapes. And I mean, pareidolia is a thing, right? We tend to see shapes. But after what had happened with the whole hugging, and then, there was a lot of incidents. And then the other guide told me she had the same thing happen to her, only it was pulling, like they were pulling on her skirt and holding on to her. But the most interesting thing was, as I was finishing up that tour and everybody was escorted, I guided them out of the gates and there was another tour coming over the hill. I took a walk over to this side. A little veil got pulled out from under my hat. And I thought I had got it caught on the fence because
I was waiting for you to say that your bobby pins came out.
Pins. Like you can see there's these little spiky, the fence sort of has these little, so I thought, oh, I must have caught it on the fence. Like, I turned around. I was not near the fence, but my veil had been pulled right out from off my head. My hat was still on, but my veil was now hanging down, and I looked for everything to see what I could have snagged it on, because that was my very first thing. I'm like, I think I must have snagged it on something. But there's you can see, this is like a really wide open spot, right? I'm just going to move over this side. Like there's nothing here. I thought I might have caught it here, but I was actually over by this gravestone at that point. So there was no way, my veil wasn't that big that it was, it wasn't a wedding veil 45 feet long. It was just, sort of a piece of netting that I had. But it was just such a strange incident there. And I've had that happen a couple of times when I've gone to this cemetery. So it's not just once. It's quite a number of times. Almost every time I go there, I either hear giggling or I'm touched. Something touches me, touches my leg. I haven't been hugged again. And I think it might be because I wasn't wearing that outfit. And perhaps that outfit might have been something that they recognized, right? Having, many women wore widow's weeds in mid-century, Victorian Canada and in the UK. So I think
they were being mischievous,
Well, I think so too, but
and not in an evil way,
No, and actually, that's the thing here. There really isn't anything negative feeling in this cemetery, even though there is activity. And it's quite playful in nature. I also feel it when I walk from the house down, and you kind of go across what is now a butterfly meadow, but you go across and there's a hill that kind of goes down a sloping hill to the cemetery. I'll often feel the kids running by me when I walk on that hill area there. It's like, they're running and chasing each other and playing, and you sort of get that feeling of them as you move towards the cemetery. The one thing that was really funny that night was the fact that there was a mad bull across the river. And I say that because it's this time of year. Well, it was in October then, right? But the bull was across the way. There's a farm over there, and it was just, at the top of its lungs. And it was this long, it was scaring the crap out of people because what it was. And of course, I'm like, it's okay. It's just a cow. It's a bull over there. It's just, and they're like, that's horrifying. I've never heard, I just thought a cow would go moo. I'm like, oh no, they have a big voice when they want to have, but of course it was across the river and it was mooing all the time, right? So it was this big, long, drawn out moo. So it was so funny. So all these things go together. But if you have a chance to go to Ruthven, and Rachel, whenever you can, get over here one day, we'll take you there because Ian's
great. I'd love to go.
Ian, when you went to Ruthven, did you or Trudy pick up on anything interesting in the cemeteries, either of them, or no?
Not anything specific, but it was just a very creepy feeling in there. Maybe creepy is not the right word because it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't scary creepy. It was just.
It's
Do you ever feel like you've been watched, Ian? When you're going through graveyards in general, cemeteries,
there was a feeling about the site. It was just kind of uneasy.
You know what it is about it? It seems very still. I find when you go in this graveyard, even though the wind can be blowing and the leaves can be rustling, there's this very still energy. And I understand what you're saying. It's almost like when
birds.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's a void because a void has no sound, but it's just this feeling that kind of, if you're not comfortable with it, it might put you at a feeling of being ill at ease. I'm okay with it. I've been at the cemetery many, many times, but just, such an interesting story. And it was the one that I ended up using in the commercial because it was just such a unique experience. I mean, I've had a lot of really great interactions with spirits and that, but this one was just uncanny because it wasn't just me. There was hundreds of people through this location that night, and so many of them were talking about. And it wasn't that we were all getting together and talking about it. It was at the end of the night, we had a sort of meet up in the stable and in the stable room. And then we started talking about the things, and so many people, then they were pulling out their cameras and going, look what I caught. And there was this weird mist that just looked like little people throughout the cemetery. And it wasn't like a cohesive fog that rolls in off the river, because then you get that rolling in of the fog. This was odd little shapes, just random, it was very interesting, very unique. So
when we visited there was one of the gravestones that we were both drawn to. And I don't know if you remember this one. It's when you go in, it's to the right, more towards the back, and it's a big one.
Back here.
It has a cross on the top of it.
for watching The Ghost Show Online. Join your hosts again next week as they discuss more tales of the supernatural, the paranormal, and all things spectacular. See you soon.